What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming back with another video, and today we got the box office breakdown for the weekend. So as I mentioned on the video for Friday, where I was giving a little bit of a preview where it already had made close to 1.8, 1.9 billion, I said that by the end of the weekend, it's going to have crossed not only the $2 billion mark, but also will have beaten the entire run of Infinity War and also some other films. And sure enough, it has indeed made that much money. So first, though, let's look at the domestic numbers for the weekend. So as you can see there, to no one's surprise, Avengers Endgame is at number 1 with a 59.2% drop, so not a terrible drop. Not great, but also not terrible either. And this one, again, coming in at $145.8 million for the weekend. We have some new releases that did not even hold a candle to anything that Endgame was able to do, with The Intruder, Long Shot, Ugly Dolls, which came in at 11, 10, and 8 million respectively. Captain Marvel made another $4.2 million. Yay, I guess. Shazam, the real Captain Marvel, made $2.4 million. And El Chicano made $700,000, and it was only in 600 theaters. So, yeah, I guess that's kind of impressive when you look at the per theater, but really nothing that much going on. As I mentioned, though, there's no real competition going on for this movie. I would say the only movie on here on that list that I had even heard of really was Ugly Dolls and The Long Shot. You know, even Ugly Dolls, from the moment I saw the trailers, I said, oh, well, this looks like a February release, and yet somehow it's getting a May release, and yeah, it does not look good at all. It's an animated show. And then Long Shot is the one with Seth Rogen, and it just doesn't look really all that great. So, yeah, I mean, some people went to go see it. I guess some people like it. But overall, it is all about the Endgame. So let's talk about Endgame's numbers. So Endgame, at this point in time, has made $619.6 million at the domestic box office. That is big news because that means in 2 weeks, it has made that much money. And the entirety of the run of Black Panther, for example, made close to $700 million domestically. So this film is definitely on pace to be able to catch up with that and surpass it, being probably the largest grossing domestic run for any MCU film. But what's most impressive, though, is indeed that foreign total. It has now made $1.5 billion, or close to, if you round it up, to $1.6 billion overseas, which is just absolutely insane, with a worldwide total of $2.18 or $2.2 billion. That means that this film in the first 2 weeks has already made more than the close to $2 billion, a little over $2 billion that Infinity War made, and also even more so than other films. For example, like The Force Awakens. Let's see if the website is actually working now, because they were just doing some updates on some of the box office numbers. And so when it comes to The Force Awakens just made a little bit over the $2 billion mark, just a little bit more than what Infinity War ended up making, close to around $936 million when it comes to the overall domestic totals. I don't know exactly if this film is going to be able to, if Endgame is going to be able to reach that same level with that close to almost $1 billion domestic total, because this was a film that so many people were waiting for. This is a film that a lot of people wanted to see, and so I think because of that reason, what you're going to end up seeing is a film in Endgame that's going to make a lot of money, but not nearly as close as this much. But as you see, that foreign total has already been totally demolished by Endgame, because in The Force Awakens it made $1.1 billion, and as you can see, when it comes to Endgame has now made just a little bit over. As you see, we're getting the update in progress. So let me go ahead and move on as that is updating. So, The Intruder, a film that I never even heard of, with Dennis Quaid, Megan Good, and Michael Ealy. Had a very limited release. This one made about $11 million. The Long Shot made around $10 million, and so that is indeed very impressive. Ugly Dolls, $8.5 million. That is abysmal. It only cost about $45 million to make the movie, though, so obviously I think that it's going to be, it's probably going to end up making its money back, you know, close to it. Ideally, maybe, we'll see. But that's definitely not a whole lot of money. Shazam, the real Captain Marvel, has now made $355.5 million, and so it has definitely reached the point where it's not going to really make that much more than what it already has. Because of that, it's not going to get close to $400 million. Unfortunately, I would say it's probably going to get closer to maybe $375, but still, it's going to have made money, and it's already in the process of making profit, because it only costs around $100 million to make the film, and even though it's going to come in now as the lowest grossing DCEU franchise, just under the $650 million for Justice League, the big difference is that for Justice League, it cost north of $300 million production budget alone to make that film. This, it only cost $100 million, and so therefore Shazam is not by any means close to being the least profitable DC franchise film, because that, of course, still goes to Justice League, which was god-awful. Shazam was great. Shazam was a lot of fun. It's sad that not a whole lot of people are seeing it, either domestically or in the foreign market. Again, $135 million domestically, $220 million. Those aren't gigantic numbers, and I really do hope and wish that the DC universe is able to get someone like a Kevin Feige, who has a much broader vision And obviously, I don't like Kevin Feige now, but no one can deny that the last 20 films or so have, for the most part, all been pretty damn good. Even the ones that he was not necessarily involved with, all the ones that he was involved with, there were only maybe a couple, like 2 or 3 that we could call actual stinkers, and then a bunch in the middle that were kind of the mediocre types, and some really great films to boot. Again, Infinity War being one of them. And then, of course, I do have my Alita Battle Angel fans out there. It is still in theaters. It is still actually making some money, and so right now it's at $404 million, and as I said, it's going to top out probably most at $405 million, which seems to be the case. We still don't have a release date yet, though, unfortunately, so once I find out when the Blu-ray and DVD release date is available, I, of course, will make a video about it, and I will post all the links so that way you can pre-order it. It looks, though, like we're going to get closer to a June or July release date. Some people might ask why this film was released in February, why aren't we getting more of a release? And as I said before, and I've mentioned this several times, because this was the last official Fox property to be owned by Fox in its entirety and not have any time in between when dealing with Disney. This means that this film probably is going through chaos behind the scenes, and it's going to take them a lot longer to get the Blu-ray set aside and put together, which is sad because I really want to be able to buy it. However, we can understand why, because obviously people are getting fired, people are getting moved around and shuffled around, so all the chaos explains why this film is not getting the release that it should be getting on Blu-ray much sooner than what it is, but that kind of helps to explain it all. But Endgame is doing insanely well, and that's why I do have to call for a second. I do like my guys over at Cosmic Book News. They normally cover things from a much less biased perspective, but also too that they are much less of a shill site. They don't really try and get the press pass. They don't basically protect production companies. They go after them. They go after the companies. They go after the box office, and they try and stay mostly honest with it. And I don't think that they're coming in to be dishonest here, but as you can see, it says Avengers Endgame box office lower than expected. Box office plummets was another article, and they were talking about a single day-to-day comparison, which is indeed true. I mean, there is a massive drop-off. The problem, though, is that it didn't take into account the entire weekend, which we didn't get until now, and that being close to that 60% mark is actually really not all that bad, especially when you compare it to other franchises, because most of the franchises have similar, similar week 1 to week 2 drop-offs, but it's still making a crap ton of money, and in the first 2 weeks, it's already made so much money that even though it's going to slow down, especially as it's get more competition. Next week, we have Detective Pikachu. Week after that, we got John Wick 3. And then not long after that, we've got Godzilla, King of the Monsters. So there is going to be a lifeline on Endgame before it starts to drop out of that number 1 spot to the number 2. I think it actually has a good chance of beating out Detective Pikachu next week. Though, of course, there is a big question mark because, for all I know, Detective Pikachu could be a massive hit. I really don't think it will be. I think it's going to do well. I don't think it's going to do enough to be able to knock off this in its 3rd week. I don't think it's going to do north of 100 million. But again, could be wrong. Could absolutely be that type of film that could do that, especially since it has a lot of 3D screen releases. And in fact, opening night, the only prime showing for me is a 3D showing. And so that might be enough to be able to push it into that number 1 spot. And so it might be good marketing on their part. The whole point of this article, though, is to try and say and ask the question, is it going to be able to beat Force Awakens? Yes, it is. Now, they're going to say the second weekend box office record of $149.2 million. And that was talking about the domestic numbers. And as you can see, they were able to make 145, so they weren't able to make the record. Again, when it comes to these records, they're always in the weeds. So 149 was the second week record for a film. That really doesn't matter because the first weekend was just so outrageously high. I mean, it destroyed Force Awakens in the first weekend. And as I said, this film has already made more than The Force Awakens did in the entirety of its run in the first 2 weeks. As I said, this is a film that is going to probably end up, it's at $2.2 billion right now. By next weekend, it's going to be well close to 2.5. So I would say by the end of next weekend, we'll see it at 2.5. And at that point, it really comes down to how much legs does it have? Does it have enough to make another $5 million to be able to bring it to that $3 billion mark? 500 million to make it to that $3 billion mark? Or is it going to have such a slowdown that it's going to creep up to the Avatar number, maybe just match it, maybe even exceed it? And then, of course, the discussion comes, oh, well, when you adjust for inflation, Avatar still wins, etc. And obviously, I would much rather this film have a clean victory because I still hate Avatar. But guys, what are y'all's thoughts on the box office numbers? Have you seen Endgame? I feel like everyone and their mom has seen Endgame at this point. Also, I think what's interesting is that the fact it cost $356 million to make this film, which is an insanely high number, meaning that overall, the film costs, if you take again into account other things, around over north of $500 million, close to maybe $600 million just to make and promote this movie, which is just an insanely high number, meaning that this film needed to make like close to $1.5 billion or so just to break even. Obviously, it's gone well past that point. It's definitely in the profitable area now, but the fact that a film has to make that much to make up what it put into a film shows you how expensive movies are getting these days, but also why many studios might start to try to step back how much money they put into their films and start focusing more on streaming services where it costs a lot less and there could be eventually more profit in them in the long run. So what would your thoughts about that in the comments below also. So guys, let me know your thoughts on any of the movies that we talked today. Have you even seen or heard of The Intruder, The Long Shot, Ugly Dolls, obviously Shazam? It's a really good film. It's a great. I would say it's my first. I would say it's my favorite DC film. I would say that this and Wonder Woman are at my top. Then Aquaman, and then all the other films can go wherever the heck they want because I don't really care. Battle Angel was fantastic too. It's probably not playing anywhere near you at this point in time because it's just been out of so many theaters. As of this weekend alone, it was only in 43 theaters in the United States alone, and yet somehow it was able to still make some money. It was able to make $21,000, and so hey, people are still going to see it, but it's not really that well available. And of course, Ugly Dolls is just, watch the trailer for it and tell me your thoughts because it is awful. Also, do you think Avengers Endgame is going to reach that $3 billion mark? Or at the very least, do you think it's going to beat Avatar? Would love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below. Guys, if you like this video, smash the like button, give us a subscribe. Seriously, you're all amazing, beautiful people. Thank you so much for all the love and all the support this past weekend. Jeremy has been out of town, and it was so much fun to be on the Peter Mayhew stream last night over on the Nerdrotic channel, where we were able to raise a lot of money for the Peter Mayhew Foundation. Please go check out the Peter Mayhew Foundation and support that organization, and indeed, rest in peace, Peter Mayhew. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.